It was early November, and the air in the forest was crisp with the chill of the coming winter. Garrett had been hunting in these woods for years, but today felt different. The dense pines and thick underbrush seemed more oppressive than usual, casting long shadows even though the sun was only just rising. He made his way through the familiar terrain, his boots crunching on the frost-covered leaves, the sound of nature stirring around him, birds calling, squirrels darting, the occasional rustle in the bushes. It was a comforting symphony, but today it didn't settle his nerves like it usually did. He had a spot in the woods, a little clearing he'd found years ago, tucked away from the usual hunting trails. It was perfect for waiting, nestled between two ridges. He'd seen deer here before, big bucks. Today, though, he wasn't sure what he was expecting. He felt like he was being watched. As he reached his usual spot, he set up his stand and settled in, rifle across his lap. The sun was still low, casting an orange glow over the trees, but the quiet felt wrong, unnerving. No birds, no squirrels, even the wind had died down. The stillness in the woods was suffocating, as though nature itself was holding its breath. Garrett tried to shake the feeling, focusing on his rifle and adjusting his position in the stand. He scanned the tree line, eyes darting between the trunks, waiting for movement. Hours passed, and still, nothing. His eyes began to grow heavy with the weight of anticipation, and he began to wonder if he should pack it in for the day. That's when he heard it. A snap, the distinct sound of a twig breaking, followed by more subtle movements in the brush. Garrett froze, his breath catching in his throat. He couldn't see anything through the thick foliage, but he could feel something. Someone out there, moving, just beyond his line of sight. His hand instinctively tightened around the rifle. The noise stopped. Absolute silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence now. The air felt thicker, like the forest was holding on to something, waiting. Garrett's instincts told him to stay still, to stay quiet, to be patient. But something told him that whatever was out there wasn't a deer. The sun had dipped lower now, and the shadows stretched longer. As the minutes dragged on, Garrett's sense of unease grew. The woods felt wrong. He tried to brush it off his nerves, but deep down, he knew this wasn't just the usual tension of a hunt. He'd been out here countless times before, but this felt like something else. Another snap. Garrett's head whipped toward the noise. This time it was closer. His heart skipped a beat, and his grip on the rifle tightened. He scanned the brush, but the movement was too subtle, too swift. Something was circling him. He could feel it. Then, a shape, just a flash, a dark silhouette moving between the trees. His breath hitched, but he didn't dare move. Not yet. His mind raced. Could it be another hunter? No, it was too fast, too fluid, and it wasn't wearing orange. The figure was almost too fast to track, like it was gliding, not walking. Garrett's eyes darted to the forest floor, trying to spot any sign of movement. There, between two trees, a pair of glowing eyes gleamed out from the shadows. His pulse raced. They were too high, too far off the ground. Deer had eyes that sat lower, almost level with the hunter. These were higher. He squinted harder, and that's when he saw it. A figure, standing impossibly still, blending into the bark of the tree. Its limbs were unnaturally long, bent at awkward angles, and its head tilted at an unsettling degree, watching him intently. It was not a deer. His instincts screamed at him to run, but the fear locked him in place. The creature didn't move. It just stared. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. Garrett didn't wait another second. He grabbed his gear and scrambled down from the stand, his heart pounding in his chest. He should have packed it in hours ago. Should have trusted his gut. But now, every snap of a twig, every shift in the leaves made his skin crawl. He wanted nothing more than to leave, to get out of those woods. But something tugged at the back of his mind, urging him to stay, and that's when he heard the voice. A whisper, faint and barely audible, but unmistakable. Come closer. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't his imagination. The words were clear, and they sent a shiver down his spine. His legs froze, and he turned slowly, scanning the trees. The creature was standing in the distance again, its glowing eyes locked on him, its body now taller, thinner, more distorted. Its fingers stretched toward him, twisting unnaturally as if beckoning him forward. Garrett had to get out. He had to leave. He spun around and sprinted through the woods, branches slashing at his face, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Every step felt like it took him farther from safety, but closer to something that wasn't human, something that followed his every movement, every breath. Just when he thought he'd reached the edge of the woods, he heard a scream, a blood-curdling wail that echoed through the trees. It wasn't a human scream, it was a cry of something far worse. The ground seemed to shift beneath him, and he stumbled, falling to his knees. He turned back. The creature was closer now, its long limbs stretching toward him, dragging itself closer with terrifying speed. Garrett didn't remember what happened next. The world seemed to blur, the darkness swallowing him whole. The next morning, a search party found his rifle, still propped up in his stand, and his gear scattered on the forest floor. But there was no sign of Garrett. The woods were quiet again, for now.